word in the beginning referring to the beginning of creation. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But John is not looking at the word in the beginning as the beginning of creation, but the beginning of all things. This is why he could boldly say that that which was from the beginning. The beginning in that context does not refer to the beginning of creation, but the beginning of all things. That is why John could always say that in the beginning was the word. The word was with God and the word was God. That beginning there is not the beginning of creation, but the beginning of all things. So John that wrote the book of 1 John and the Gospel of John used the word in the beginning in reference to eternal past. But Moses used the word in the beginning in Genesis in reference to the beginning of creation. So you are going to notice that John was operating from eternal past perspective. Moses was operating from time. Oh Jesus. I say, are you still here? Are you sure? Right. Now, the reason why Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus never borders on the issue of sin was because the question of sin or sin redeemed never arises from the church, because the church never had connection with sin. The church existed before the foundation of the world, and the church was not in the world. It means that the church had no connection to the world, because the church existed before the world began. So if you are talking about sin, sin came into the world when man came. It was man that brought sin to the world. Are you hearing me? And Paul is saying to the church in Ephesus that the church existed before man came. So man's software called sin cannot have anything to affect the church. So the church was not in the world in the first place. The church has never been in the world. The church has been in heaven always. So it has nothing to do with sin redeemed. That's why his letter to the church in Ephesus has nothing to do with sin. He's bringing us into the eternal past perspective of all things. How all things began. So Paul is more deeper to the church in Ephesus than the church in Romania. Because every idea that is communicated to the Romanian church is an idea that begins from the beginning of man, the beginning of time. Oh Jesus, are we still here? So just like I said, the church existed before the foundation of the world, was never in the world. So it was not touched by sin. Are you hearing me? Now, if you study the letter to the church in Ephesus carefully, you are going to discover that the church was not redeemed. It was sinners that were redeemed. And because they were redeemed, they were brought to become part of the church. Are you here? The church has never been redeemed because the church had never sinned. It was individual sinners that sinned, and they were the one that redeemed. And on the strength of being redeemed, they were now knitted together into the church. They were now incorporated in the church. So the church has never been redeemed. It was individuals that sinned that were redeemed, because the church has never been redeemed because the church has never been in the world. And because it has never been in the world, it has never been touched by sin. Are you still here? Are you sure? Let's take the matter a bit further. Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus was his letter according to God's perspective. That is to say that in the sight of God, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? The church existed before redemption. But in the sight of man, the church came after redemption. You know, the teachings today are teachings that made us to believe that it was because Jesus died then the church was redeemed. That's the sight of man. But in the sight of God, the church existed even before redemption began. We are driving something home. Are we here? I say, are we still here? Now, the church relates to our standing in Christ. Redemption relates to our standing in Adam. The church relates to our standing in Christ. Redemption relates to our standing in Adam. It means that, are we here? The church is Christ. So because we sinners were redeemed, we became part of his body. He is the head. Then we that were redeemed now form his body. But the church is Christ. He has never been in the world before. He has never been touched by sin before. So there was no need for his own redemption. We were only brought and engrafted. These are the metaphors Jesus was using when he said, I am the vine, ye are the branches. It means that you only came later to be knitted together. So before the branches came, the vine had been. And the vine was not corrupt. So the vine didn't need redemption. So if you say the church was redeemed because Jesus died, you are wrong. You are not looking at these issues from eternal perspective. You are looking at these issues from time. You may be right theologically by saying that Jesus died to redeem the church. But actually it was not so. Jesus only died to redeem sinners that were incorporated in the church. The revelation of the church is a higher